So this evening's yin class, armed with our bolster bricks and blocks. We're going to start in banana pose. So we're just going to lie down. You need to make sure you've got enough room behind. So get your arms out fully extended, and we're just going to go down the center line of the mat. Usually bend the knees a little bit to help yourself roll down. Feet down the center line. And then just slowly lengthen those arms out towards the end of the mat. I quite like to just interlace the fingers a little bit, but you can also allow yourself to take hold of either wrist. Now it's customary to actually take hold of the wrist of the side that you're moving away from, so you get a deeper stretch down the armpit. So if you were going to take wrists, in this case, we would use the left hand to take hold of the right wrist, and then we'll wriggle the shoulders over towards the left as far as we comfortably can, and we want to try and keep the shoulders and the hips flat to the floor. We'll turn the head in a little bit, and then we'll slowly take the legs out to the left side as well. You can, by all means, cross one leg over the other, so that'll be right leg over left. But if that feels like it's pinching in your sciatic nerve or too much of a tug into your lower back, remembering that you're still going to have space to move and drop into. So as your body starts to release, things will change. So if you start with your legs crossed and then it just gets intense as your body opens up, you might want to bring it back. So don't think you have to sit there, like a statue. We're trying to master the art of letting go in the body, which is very easy to say, but not quite so easy to do. Most of us hold tension unintentionally in areas of our body, and sometimes those are affected very obviously in these postures, and sometimes they're not so. So scanning around, hunting, just asking the question, am I holding on? Can I let go? Can I see myself relaxing into this pose more deeply? Now, you don't need to do anything more than breathe normally. And we let it be very much a belly breath, so we can feel diaphragm expand and contract. And I'm going to start to untangle the legs, bring the feet back to where I think the center line of the mat is, which is always a little tricky to calibrate in your body. Lengthen yourself out. We're going to change the grip over if you're using the wrists, and then I'm going to go to the opposite side. So just wriggling in, shoulders nice and flat, hips square to the ground. Use the legs over very gently. Take a few breaths and assess how you feel before making any decisions about whether you're going to cross your legs or not. Even if you did on the previous side, try not to assume that both sides of your body are going to feel exactly the same. There's a good chance they won't. So I'm going to take the leg over gently, and yeah, giving it a little bit of time to kind of settle in and go, yep, that feels okay today. Mostly, in my own yin practice, tend not to do it. Most of the time, my back feels like it's been overworked with all the classes I teach, and I have to just be a little bit more cautious of how my body feels. So that's part of yoga, really, and the physical aspect of it anyway, just looking after yourself, making sensible choices for you. And we'll come back slowly. Ease the arms back down. Have a little bit of a wriggle through. I'm going to bring the feet in. I'm starting to move towards stirrup pose, which looks very much like happy baby. I like to take a block underneath the back of the head when I'm doing this in my yin practice. I'm slowly going to draw the knees in towards me. And I'm going to have a little rock through the spine, just holding hands lightly around the shins. I want the groins to open out a little bit first. And then I'm going to take the hands on the inside, slide towards the ankles, and then see if I can reach fingers around the little toes whilst the knees are out wide and the heels in. So I get starts to lengthen the spine and lengthen the back of the neck as well. Loosen the jaw. Now, if you can't reach the little toe side of your foot, take hold of the ankle shin area. When you're ready, we'll lift one heel at a time directly over the knees. And then the grip needs to be fairly strong, obviously. But we are trying to relax the body. So we'll start by thinking about letting the shoulders relax. The arms are going to stay strong, really, from the elbow through the wrist to the fingers. But we'll try and relax the rest of it. Let the feet sort of drop a little bit more towards the front of the mat. So when we come into happy baby-ish poses, we tend to pull the legs in towards us quite a long way, and that rounds the spine off the floor. So to let the spine sink into the ground a little more, we let the feet travel away just an inch, maybe two. Depends on the length of your arms a little bit and the length of your legs. We're trying to relax, particularly sort of mid-back to lower back muscles and in the hips and the groins as well. And periodically lifting the head to look at the clock, but that's not something that you should be encouraged to do, because there's probably not a clock there. But even looking at the screen, moving your head around in these postures sometimes isn't a good idea. So this is one where craning the neck isn't really going to look after the nerves in the back of your neck, all the muscles. We'll see if we can sort of just listen to the verbal cues. Okay, we're going to let the heels come towards the groin and then slowly release the fingers. We'll just take hold of the sort of upper part of the shin, give the hips a little bit of a wriggle out, and then we're going to let the feet come to the floor close to the center line and close into your bottom. Now I'm going to take the arms out crucifix style, and I'm going to move my hips over towards my left and then back down to the ground and lengthen out with the right leg. Then bring the left foot on top of that right thigh and simply roll the hips over towards the right. Now, if your leg is sort of floating in the air, what you might want to do is come back, grab hold of a bolster, roll it over your body, and send it out to the side. So as you bring your foot back into place and roll over for the second time, you can actually rest your foot and your knee perhaps on that bolster out to the side. All we're trying to do is keep the shoulders flat to the ground and enjoy the twist. Again, we'll stay here for a couple of minutes. Bring ourselves gently back out of that. And bring the right foot back in. We'll move the bolster over to the opposite side. If we used it on one side, there's a good chance you'll need it on the second. Not absolute, but you know, good chance. And take the arms out nice and wide. We're going to lengthen the left leg out and move the hips over to the right, comfortable distance. Ease the foot onto the right foot onto the left thigh, and then roll the hips over and see if you can find the bolster on the floor just to rest your ankle or your knee. Ideally, if you're using the bolster, you don't want your ankle hanging off the end, as it tends to pull on the tendons in the ankle, which isn't that pleasant. Just building in stress into the body when we're trying to do everything we can to sort of release it out. Sometimes you need to sort of move the ribs around a little bit, wriggle about, put the shoulders in a comfy place. And cells move out of that as well. Once you've realigned your spine, I'll draw the knees in towards the body. I'm going to roll over to my right side. So just moving the bolster out of the way, or blocks if they're in the way. We'll come back up to sitting very slowly. And I'm going to come into seated forward bend, so caterpillar pose. I'm going to take my bolster under my legs. So I'm going to have that a little bit more under the thighs than the knees. Feet a happy distance apart. Wriggle on the sitting bones, and then gently let myself roll down. A nice rounded back. I'm going to be here for about 3 minutes. It's quite a long time. The diaphragm does feel sort of very much inhibited. Breathe a little bit more into the back of the ribs. The longer you sit here, the easier it is for you to let your head hang. Let those deep back neck muscles relax, let their noggin drop. If you can keep it into the territory of slow, long breaths. So very rounded back, working into those deep muscles down the sides of the spine. We're trying to stretch all those little attachments with the vertebrae link up, as well as feeding into the big muscles and the tenderness insertion points towards the base of the spine. A lot of different fibers involved in this particular pose, because there's a likelihood there's good connection of fascia running from the back of your legs up the side of the spine into the crown of the head, as well as the muscles themselves. So everything's getting a stretch. I'll take a breath. Start to use the hands to ease our way out. Keep the head hanging low to the last moment. Ooh, and we're up. So, going to move into deer pose. So we're going to need one flat block. Sit on that. I'm going to tuck the left foot out towards the right side. Draw the right leg back so that I can lay the shin bone of the right leg into the arch of the left foot. You can see that my heel's to the outside, hopefully, of my hip, and my toes are pointing back. And trying to get the pelvis into as neutral position as possible. So I'm going to just place the bolster there and let myself kind of lean into that a little bit to keep myself upright and see if I can sort of just get the feeling that my pelvis is sinking back to lower this sitting bone on the right side down towards the floor. I'll be here for a couple of minutes on each side. Again, you want to be careful of the knees and the ankles. You want to make sure that your knees are actually touching the floor. If they're not, you still need a little bit of wriggling around, I would suggest. Another opportunity to close your eyes, let yourself sink into the pose. Fill up those long, slow, continuous breaths where you don't feel the urge to gasp air back into your body. Very much a friendly breath. I'm going to let myself untangle. So I find the easiest thing to do is actually to lift that right knee and then extend the legs out rather than any other way. And then you can take the left leg out as well. I'm going to move my bolster across and then take my right leg out, lean in a little bit, put that left leg down, bolster in place, starting to settle. Closing the eyes if you can, if that feels natural. And then I'll release from there as well. Just untangling the legs, lengthening out. I'm going to move the bolster towards the front end of the mat. Move my block to the side. With that for the moment, we're going to come into what looks like pigeon pose, but sleeping swan pose. So I'm going to take my hands towards the bolster, allow myself to have my knees down the center line of the mat. Just going to take a little breath. I'm going to ease my left knee to the outside of my left wrist and my heel more or less underneath my groins, toes pointing out to the side. I'm going to walk the right foot back comfortably and slowly. I'm trying to get the heel in towards the groin, maybe even touching. And then I'm going to allow myself to just lean onto that bolster with my elbows underneath my shoulders and kind of let the body sink in to the shoulders and let the hips sink down, the belly sink down as well. See where the body goes. Now, I tend to like keeping my head in line more or less with my spine, but it's okay to drop the head if that feels more natural. I just find that that's a little too intense on my neck and my shoulders. When I'm trying to let them relax, it seems to be, for me, easier to let them sink this way. But everybody's different, so just trying to work out what works best for you. Now, the rear leg, you are going to be lying on top of a kneecap, and that can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable. So a blanket put underneath there can solve that problem. Or just rolling the knee slightly either out to the side or into the center might change where the pressure is on the knee and be enough for you to sit here comfortably for an extended period of time. Just letting the body sink in. There's lots of body weight and gravity taking place here on the joints. We'll see if we can use that to our advantage. So lift up from there carefully. And often the easiest way is to just roll, in this case, over to the left side and draw the right leg through. It will take a couple of minutes for your groins and your hips to sort of come back to life. And when they do, you can stretch the legs out. Carefully bring yourself back onto all fours. Knees together to start with. We'll slide the right knee out. Heel to the groin. Walk the legs back and the left leg. And when you're ready, just thinking There's no reason why you have to use the bolster. It's quite comfortable on the elbows, but you could come all the way down to the mat, not a problem. Then a chance to let yourself sink into the shoulders. May kind of get a double whammy at this. And we can lift out of that. So again, just rolling out to the side, drawing the legs in. We'll leave them out the front this time because we need to take the legs nice and wide apart. And could be using the bolster again, but this time it would be sort of lengthways in. We're going to take a little time to wriggle the legs out a little wider, sort of trying to get into the front edge of the sitting bones. So there's a little bit of movement there, letting the back of the legs open out. And then I'm going to start to lean forwards. Now you could just put your hands onto the bolster or your elbows come down if you can get low enough, but if you're not able to get that low, you can bring the end of the bolster in towards the breastbone. Just reach the fingers around and let yourself lean into it. So you want to have a nice grippy mat for this, otherwise it will bolster or just shoot off down the floor. And you following it rather rapidly, perhaps more than you'd like. But we can let the head hang here if you wish. Just going to let the legs try and relax down. Now, I do notice that the back of the hamstrings are very tight this evening. Now, while trying to let ourselves hinge from the hips, there will be a certain amount of rounding in the spine, that's for sure. Now, you could sit here for a little while, and then if you wanted to change and drop the bolster down, going crossways a little bit more and bring the elbows down if you wanted to come down in stages. Again, just listening to how the muscles feel. Sometimes if you've got a little bit of a pulled or sore muscle, it can be quite a sort of a fine strand, quite a small area. So when we come into these poses and you're kind of expecting something big to manifest itself, not always the case. Sometimes you have to sort of search out where those little nags and niggles are, the tiny ones. They can catch you out, they build up over time. So taking it nice and easy into them can be the key thing to do. We'll start to let ourselves come out of that, using the hands to lift up. And then I'm going to move the bolster out to the side. I'm going to come into a twisted lunge, so I'm just going to draw the legs in slowly. And the brick can be quite useful, just one. All that's needed, we'll come up onto all fours. I'm going to be moving my right leg out, so I'm going to move the brick over towards my left side. Allow yourself to get comfortable on the mat. Take the hands underneath your shins, knees underneath your hips. Then when you're ready, we'll move the right foot out to the outside edge of the mat and turn the toes out. I'm going to tuck the toes on the left leg and walk that back slowly. And try and let the leg lengthen out and the hips drop down. I'm going to move the brick over so it's more underneath my left shoulder, and then use my right hand to just rest against the inner thigh, letting the hips sink. I'm also going to sink into this front shoulder that's loaded on top of the brick as well. So I'm letting that lift up nice and high in towards my ear, and so sinking chest and hips down at the same time. Those back. So hands on the floor, just walking back gently, sliding the foot out to the side, back round. I'm going to move the brick across the other side. Have a little wiggle out through the hips, quite strong in the glutes, in the hip area. So when you're ready, we'll take the opposite leg out to the side, just keeping the heel a little bit onto the mat, walking the back foot away. So it does help if you're sort of closer to the front of the mat when you start. Obviously, you've got plenty of space, but that is dependent on a little bit how tall you are, I guess, and how long your limbs are. Bring in that block underneath the shoulder. I'm going to take the hand onto the inside of the thigh, just let the legs rock out. So letting the body twist gently to face the long side of the mat. Notice that the shoulder rises quite high. I'm trying to sort of let that chest sink down. So getting a decent stretch through the shoulder joints as well. And because there's can be quite a lot of movement in the shoulders, sometimes you have to move the brick around a few times, get yourself in the right place. So just making sure you're happy with that rear knee. And then we can bring ourselves out of that as well. Now I'm going to come into Baddha Konasana, or cobbler's pose. I'm going to use the flat block. I'll lay my bum down there and allow myself to bring the heels in towards the body, soles of the feet touch, and then just taking the hands. I'm not going to grip hold of the big toe, which sort of a traditional in hatha class, but I'm going to hold onto the feet anyway with the hand. Try to sit up as tall as I can and rock out the legs a little bit from side to side, so I'll get onto the sort of outer edges. And I'm just going to hang here and breathe. Be as relaxed as they can to see if those groins will open out by themselves. So go and release from there. Just draw the knees back up. Stretch the legs out gently. I'm going to come into not dissimilar pose. I'm going to bring the heels into the groin this time, heel to heel. And I'm going to take the bolster out in front. A little wriggle through the hips. Now, if you have to cross the ankles over, that's fine. It's just that physically it gets harder to lean deep into the pose because your ankles, obviously get in the way a little bit. So if you can get heel to heel comfortably, that's fine. But as I say, crossing the ankles is okie dokie. Once you're ready, you're going to start to lean forwards gently into the pose. See where you can get to. And again, just trying to let the sort of body sink down. And roll ourselves lift up from there. I'm going to cross the ankles over the opposite way. Stretching the legs out. And then when you're ready, going to let ourselves sink down again. So you'll notice that I'm using the sort of full width of the bolster with my arms. The elbows are not underneath the shoulders particularly. And then start to lift my way out of that. And then I'm going to use a brick and a block to make a little ramp at the end of the mat and the bolster. So I'm going to take an inclined shavasana or reclined, not sure which way that should go around. Anyway, zips of the bolster down to the floor. Try not to have the bolster hang too much over the end of that block. You want it to be supported. Give your bolster a little bit of a massage so that you can get the end that's going to be into your lower back a little bit flatter. So just take a little bit of time to manipulate that. And then if you know you get chilly quickly, this would be a good time to put a blanket hand and drag it over the body. You want to have at least a hand's distance between the bolster and your base of your spine. And we'll refine that a little bit once we get into the pose. So I'm going to take the hands back. Oops, and have the feet wide, knees high. Going to tuck the tailbone away from the floor a little bit. So I'm lifting my bum off the ground and pushing the tailbone towards the front of the mat. So as I then bring my pelvis back to the floor and lay down, I want to be completely supported with the bolster for my head, but I don't want to introduce too much compression into the lower back. I want my lower back to be sort of dropping off of the bolster towards the floor. And you can start just sort of seeing how you feel, make sure you're comfortable in your neck. Again, if you're finding that troublesome on the neck, if it's pulling around the neck and the shoulders, putting a rolled up blanket or a cushion underneath the back of the head support would work nicely. I'm able to get my elbows to the ground. I do appreciate for some people that their elbows will be dangling in the air, but the idea is to open the front of the chest deeply. Now the feet were wide. Now I've been here for sort of half a minute or so. I get a chance to work out whether I want to lift the hips again by pressing down gently into the feet and scooting the tailbone further forwards again. So I'm just taking some of that compression out of the lower back if it felt too much. So you really can get yourself into a comfy pace and then begin to walk the toes along towards the end of the mat, letting the legs lengthen out. And then trying to let the toes roll out to the side. Eyes closed, soft jaw. And let yourself just sink into the mat and the bolster. Not too approach coming out of this. Begin by stretching the fingers and toes, and breathing a little deeper. And then rolling the wrists and the ankles. And the reason we do that is it allows our nervous system a chance to connect, and we become much more aware of where our body is on the mat and what we're doing with it. So therefore we're safer. We'll slide the heels along the ground, one leg at a time, to draw the legs in. And then I'm going to be rolling to my right side, so I'll be disappearing in a second. I'm going to take the right arm out to the side, let the legs roll over first to the right, get them down on the ground, and then begin to slide slowly off and down towards the floor. So I'm going to leave the bolster exactly where it is. Let my hands come underneath my head for a moment. We're very much in a fetal position. And that way I manage to get down without any strains or stresses. And to draw the knees in a little closer, bring the hands underneath, press away from the floor. On an exhale to come back gently into a seated posture. And there we're done. 2003 complete. We'll sit up nice and tall. Bring the hands into the heart. Have a little stretch out through the spine as you close your eyes, taking a longer breath. Gently taking the exhale, letting the chin drop to the chest, bringing the belly drawn to the spine, and following the bow to the floor. We seal our practice at the end of the class. Inhaling, we'll let the spine build again, slowly coming up, letting the head follow, the eyes open. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope to see you on the mat again soon.